Hey everybody, welcome back to Remnant. And I wanted to sort of just talk a little bit about the new DLC because it includes a lot of things that I like, both aesthetically and in the fact that it's just more Remnant. I've made a video on the full game itself, so if you want to check that out, I'll link it in the description. But in general, I just wanted to give my thoughts on the Awakened King DLC to Remnant. And honestly, just talk about it, because it has a lot of cool elements that I find really awesome, such as the fact that it is literally Bloodborne meets Remnant. And I think, well, that's a really cool pitch to me. And the entire gothic aesthetic of it being in Lotham is just awesome. I'm really looking forward to talking about it, and it's been a DLC that I've been playing the absolute shit out of since it came out. So I thought, why not share my thoughts on it and, talk a little bit about it. So let's get right into it. Now, so what is the Awakened King expansion for Remnant? Well, it's more Remnant. It takes place in Lotham, the gothic, medieval, sort of medieval London looking area, and it's awesome. It takes the aesthetic from the, original game and just puts it all into the expansion and really just expands upon it. It includes more story for the area, which I'm not gonna get into. I'm just gonna say it takes place after the events of the Fey Imposter Kings. So if you're interested at all in that, I honestly do recommend it because it is really fucking awesome. Other than that, there are new weapons, new bosses, and a new enemy type. There are also, multiple new areas to explore, events, and storylines to, look at. And all of it adds up for a fairly good experience within the DLC, despite it being rather short. Now, length has never been a thing that I have cared about when it comes to my games, and neither will it be a factor in this review, whatever you want to call my content at this point. It's not going to be a factor because I, quite frankly, don't think it matters too much as long as you're having fun in the time that you own or play the expansion or DLC. Now, the enemy designs and the new enemies that are within the new DLC are overall fairly okay. There's one exception to that rule, and that's the little green goblin looking ass dude that you'll find and fight multiple times, both in a green and a blue variant. The green being more perceptible to just taking normal hits, and the blue one I think needs elemental damage to take proper damage, but they're just both really annoying. In general, they're really annoying to fight, and that's partially because often when they show up in the way that the procedure generation seems to work, it puts them on walls where they can spam 3 shots out at you and essentially just stun lock you. It's not the most fun enemy in the world, and it's one of those things that I also did criticize a game like Lords of the Fallen for, but I will go slightly less harsh on Remnant because of one thing, and that is Lords of the Fallen doesn't have procedural generation, meaning that all enemy placements are hand placed. Remnants aren't. They are completely procedurally, placed. There is not a whole lot of human thought behind it. So therefore, it's more acceptable in that case. Now, other than that, you have the big dude with 2 spears, who is actually a boss fight that will get reused quite often. And while it's a little bit annoying, it's also fairly understandable as it is a short expansion, and it seems to be showing up on multiple other things, and it increases the replay value, especially of the expansion, because again, it shows up in multiple other areas now of Lonesome, which is great. There's also the highwayman, or the big chunky boy that shows up and tries to ground slam pound you with his giant axe, shaking the entire ground. And he is also just a fairly alright enemy, nothing special, nothing to be scared of or anything. He's cool, and so is his design. I actually really like it a lot. It reminds me of the fat dudes from Demon Souls, was it? Yeah. I think it was. It reminds me of taller and bigger version of those, and I think that's really dope. Other than that, there's the new witch-ish type of enemy that puts up a barricade and shoots behind it. Sort of like the Titan barricade, with the exception that this one seems to sometimes just outright not work and allowing you to shoot directly through it. I'm not quite sure on that, or if it's just because I am breaking it due to insanely high damage. It's either or. Other than that, that's about all the enemies. There are also boss fights, and all of them are really cool in my opinion. I especially adore the spear dude. like the one that gets reused as an enemy later on. I think he's such a good boss fight. I think the boss fight in and of itself is interesting. The cutscene before it is awesome. And the entire visual design of him is so good. The fact that you have to break some of his armor to hit the crit spot is also just something that I like. I like seeing the visual progression of you killing a monster or an enemy. I think that's super fucking cool. Now, other than that, of course, there are rewards for killing these enemies and whatnot. And while all the normal crafting materials still exist, in this expansion there are also new weapons, rings, and armor sets. And the weapons seem to be all universally fairly cool. There being a couple of scythes is definitely a plus for me, as I think scythes are cool. And the fact that the guns all have this gothic theme type of thing going for them is just also really nice. I think it's overall just great gear. However, the rings and amulets can often feel, in my opinion, a little bit underwhelming, and there's just a lot of them. There's already 172 rings in Remnant 2 alone, and some of them don't have any event or anything tied to them, they're just a random spawn, which is kind of annoying. I kind of wish there was a system, like any form of battle log protection or any more deterministic way of obtaining some of these, like rings and whatnot that are just wall drops, but there unfortunately aren't. And this expansion adding even more of those, while not being an issue, it just adds more RNG to a game that already had a lot of RNG. Not exactly what you wanted, in my opinion. Now, it has to be said, I haven't seen this one myself, but I've heard people getting a certain amulet that is essentially the behelit from Berserker, and goddamn, that is cool. I like when these things happen. I like to see references, especially to Berserk, because Berserk is such a good manga, and it's really worth reading. I have to do a video on that at some point, but that's for a different story. Now, the music and sound design is, like always, just fantastic. It's Remnant. It's always been good. It will continue to be good. I don't need to say much more on it. It's just banging, popping out there. Now, one thing I've neglected to mention so far into this video is one really cool thing that Remnant and Gunfire Game has done with this DLC. And that is they have taken the Payday 2 approach to DLCs. Now, in case you don't know what that means, it means that if you don't own the expansion or the DLC, but you have a friend that does, you can still play that DLC as long as you're playing with them. So if they load into the DLC area and you join in on them, you can still play it, you can still get the gear, you can still get the classes and all of that with them, which is such a good thing. It cannot be overstated how good that is for both the health of the game, for matchmaking, and anything in between. It's something that more publishers and, well, games should do, where they allow people who don't own an expansion or DLC to play that DLC as long as they have friends who does own it. And I think that's a really good approach to just in general making DLC and expansion as content towards your game. I think it's a really cool concept, and I think it's something that should be done more often. So props to Gunfire Games for doing that. In my opinion, it's a huge thing to see them take that approach, as I haven't really seen it being taken a lot ever. But here it is, and I think that's really nice. I hope this inspires other game developers looking at you, Bungie, to do exactly the same thing, allowing people who don't own an expansion to play the expansion as long as they have friends that do own it, because it increases both the enjoyment of the game in general, but it also allows people who might not necessarily own it themselves to get their foot in and try some of the new content. For a game like Destiny, it could allow the new light experience, as long as you have friends who play it anyway, to become a lot better. It not only could do that, but I think even more importantly than that, it would also give everybody a chance to just enjoy the new content to a game that clearly deserves being enjoyed. A huge prop to Gunfire Games for that. Lastly, I do also want to mention that while I get that for some people, and I've seen that come up a lot in the Steam reviews, that being that the DLC is expensive in comparison to what you're getting, what you're getting being about 3 hours of new story content, like new DLC story, and then the extra items around it. I understand why that is expensive. I also see that, but the way that I look at games, review them, and so on doesn't really feature in the price tag, more or less just how fun it is. And honestly, this is fairly good, in my opinion. That being said, I do understand why there will be the complaint that it is a little bit expensive for what you're getting, being that it is a relatively short expansion. Lastly, for me as a personal note, if my voice has been sounding rough in this video, it's because I was at a concert in Tuesday where I completely destroyed my voice and it hasn't really recovered yet, so sorry about that. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do the YouTube stuff, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Bye.